Ever ask yourself, where did the towers go? Dr. Judy Wood, ICU PsyOp Recovery Program, addressing your questions, your curiosities, your mysteries regarding that fateful day.
Didn't hear it, you didn't see it, you won't see nothing, no one, never in your life, you never heard it, how sad it all seems without any proof.
You got far.
You didn't hear it, you didn't see it, you never heard it, not a word of it, you won't see nothing, no one, never tell a soul what you know is the truth.
ICU PsyOp Recovery Program, the character-driven production on Guerrilla Media Network. If you can handle the truth, tune in.
You had 2 500,000-ton buildings go away.
Right.
You get a lot of dust.
Oh, absolutely. It's just weird that usually dust will eventually settle. That's what I'm tripping out on, that it's actually rising.
Yes, and I was wondering, why does it go up at a certain point in time? And one thought, this is a thought experiment. You get a handful of gravel and you throw it. It's going to go a certain distance. If you take the same amount of mass in terms of flour and throw it, it doesn't go very far because it's got a lot more air resistance. So that's one reason why it would roll out a certain point and stop, because if it's breaking down as it goes. But let's see, if it rolls out to Warren Street, and Chambers Street is where the pedestrian bridge is or was. I guess it still is there. So the South Tower rolls out as far as Warren Street, 1 block short of Chambers Street, and then the North Tower rolls up as far as Chambers Street, which is a block further than Warren Street. Turns out the towers are about a block apart. So they each appeared to have rolled out. The dust rollout was about the same distance for both. It just the tower went, and so if you look, from a sky shot, you see an abrupt ending of the dust at Warren Street, and then when the other tower goes, you see it roll past that, and it's pretty peculiar. Another mental exercise I did was, imagine you have a pile of dust on the concrete floor of your basement, and you drop a cookie sheet on it, and it puffs the dust out. Mm-hmm. You're going to have heavier dust, and it's going to trail off thinner and thinner.
Right, it would dissipate after a while. This
abruptly stops, like, almost you draw a line with chalk.
Like it's an invisible wall holding it back.
And then it goes up. Now, I was wondering, it almost looks like it has, hot air balloons in it, taking it up.
See,
why would it go up?
Well, this is kind of getting it back to that electrolysis thing we were talking about with oxygen. Yep. It's almost, I wonder if there's a gas or something in that
it produces.
Right, because I'm telling you, this lather, or whatever you're calling this, it looks very, very similar to what...
That's why I was dropping the hint here for you. We'll lay it on the shelf, and just to remember this picture, that there's something that makes it go up. Okay. And it sure looks like that. We're just looking at the observations. All right, then the next picture, we're going to look at 2 frames of, see if I can, here we go, looking at Bob and Bree's apartment. Here's the dust rollout, and then you can see it goes up, but it's weirdest thing, it doesn't quite reach their window, and it goes up. It never touches their window.
Wow.
And the audio of this is also remarkable, that you hear a shh, like a waterfall. You don't hear kaboomity crashity bangity boom. So, ready for that video.
Oh my God, all these people! Oh my God, oh my God! Oh my God.
Oh, it's awful.
Oh baby, hold Lily. Oh my God.
Come on, let's go to the other room.
Yeah. Is this dangerous?
I think it's just smoke.
Is the air conditioner turned off in the room? And the windows closed in the bedroom?
Near the area are an absolute crazy situation. The entire top of the building just collapsed.
The entire building just collapsed.
The building just collapsed.
We're going to leave because the smoke is coming right at us.
Obviously, this is
a devastating trauma in our history. They're gone. The World Trade Center is no more. We do not know at this point the extent of injuries or casualties, how many people were in these buildings trying to get out. We've seen some gut-wrenching.
Oh, people are running away. They're running away. What are they going to do? You guys got to run away.
You see the obvious. Look at ABC News right now.
I think it's going to be blown away from us. No, the wind is being blown away.
Horrific, incredible, not to be believed. Tuesday morning, you were looking at live pictures of the World Trade Center where just a few minutes ago, within the last minute actually, the second Twin Tower collapsed. Just to recap, if you're just joining us, around 8:42 Eastern Time this morning here in New York City, a plane crashed into the right Twin Tower of the World Trade Center about 2/3 of the way up the building, leaving a huge gaping hole, a huge fire, and tons of billowing smoke. About 25 minutes later, a second jet, believed to be a 727 or 737, then crashed in a second.
You can see that the dust definitely goes up.
Right. The more I think about it, it almost seems like, because the gas will rise, so it seems like there's got to be something more to the dust, because
Yep.
the gas will rise. The dust would not rise like that. It would settle eventually.
Especially with the light breeze. And also, it happens in the same part of the process, like it's a certain time in the process
Oh, baby, hold Lily.
that it produces something that makes it rise.
Oh, my God.
Now, how high does it actually go?
Well, we'll get there after we finish this video. But I don't know if you could hear it at the beginning when it was this shh sound. It's a very smooth sound, like a waterfall.
Is the air conditioner turned off in the room? And the windows closed in the bedroom? Is this dangerous?
I think it's just smoke.
Is the air conditioner turned off in the room? And the windows closed in the bedroom?
Near the area are an absolute crazy situation. The entire top of the building just collapsed.
The entire building just collapsed.
The building just collapsed.
We're going to leave because the smoke is coming right at us.
Obviously, this is a devastating trauma in our history. They're gone. The World Trade Center is no more. We do not know at this point the extent of injuries or casualties, how many people were in these buildings trying to get out. We've seen some gut-wrenching.
Oh, people are running away. They're running away.
Hanging out of windows.
What are they going to do? You guys got to run away.
You see the obvious. Look at ABC News right now.
I think it's going to be blown away from us. No, the wind is being blown away.
Horrific, incredible, not to be believed. Tuesday morning, you were looking at live pictures of the World Trade Center where just a few minutes ago, within the last minute actually, the second Twin Tower collapsed. Just to recap, if you're just joining us, around 8:42 Eastern Time this morning here in New York City, a plane crashed into the right Twin Tower of the World Trade Center.
It's the beginning that you hear the sound of it, and then you can hear when they slide their window closed.
Yeah, I can hear it this time. I'm wondering if the water, the Hudson right there, could have had some part in the energy field, using that water somehow. I think for most people, it's just easier to believe some guys flew an airplane into a building and called it a day.
Yeah, people need it in a soundbite. It takes care of it.
Yeah, I mean, this is over so many people's heads, and the psychological part of it is overwhelming. It's a hard thing.
But it's right in front of us if we open our eyes. It's something we weren't taught to do in school.
One, and I know I'm going to ask a question, and I'm sure there's no answer to it, but I'm wondering, because usually whenever you are trying something, new technology or whatever it is, you always want to trial run first. You want to make sure it works before you actually use it. And what I'm wondering is, I wouldn't think that they would just try out this new toy on the first try.
Wait a minute. Do you think they've never tried it before?
Well, I'm saying I know they probably did, but that's my question.
Yeah. Do you have a security clearance? Yeah, I know it's something that a lot of my detractors say that they would have used it before they moved, But how do you know they haven't? How do you know in Area 51 they haven't used it?
I mean, I'm just wondering if they got a building, they built just similar to the towers out in the middle of nowhere just to, test this toy out to see how it works.
One of the NIST contractors, ARA, has a test facility where they build buildings and then destroy them to test the lethality of various weapons. And I've got a picture of it in my book where they blew something up and you got chunks of concrete. Like, okay, if you explode something, that's what you get. You get chunks of concrete. So ARA would know that if you dustify a building, it's not bombs.
Right. That's good.
So this picture here is quite interesting. As you commented, dust doesn't keep going up.
And we know it doesn't smoke.
And the dark fumes seem to go west in the left-hand picture, and then the white fumes go up. And they seem to go up to a certain height, and then they dissipate. It's kind of interesting. This is pretty far up they went.
Yeah, that looks probably, I don't know, 6,000-7,000 feet or so.
Now, I don't know how to estimate that, but you can figure it out. But it looks like it takes the one on the right. You can see where it takes a jog, like that. Something at a certain elevation, it does something else. But what is clear is this is pretty far up. Dust from driving down a dirt road, it doesn't go up like this.
Yeah, I could see some people arguing that was the smoke, but the
smoke. It also is kind of like a funnel cloud, or it's like a tube. The way it goes up, like it's on a mission. It knows where it's going.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
I've seen like forest fires. It kind of tumbles and wafts around.
Okay.
Lower down.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. It is kind of spiraling around.
Or not necessarily that it's spiraling around, but it's kind of a tube.
Okay.
You don't really see the motion, but up above you can see on the one on the right where it's close to the camera, it's starting to waft away, and forest fires do that down in the ground.
How are these photos taken? I'm curious.
Satellite.
Oh, okay. I'm surprised you're able to get these photos if they're from satellite. But
this is from NASA.
Really? Wow.
Next. Thank you. And let's look more at this interesting fumes. You see why I call it fumes and not smoke? Because you assume fire was the cause. If you're told smoke, fires for 99 days, all steel shipped to China, everything's taken care of, right?
Right.
But look at the fumes. You got wet tire tracks. And where did all that nice, fresh potting soil come from? And you notice in the upper right corner, this misting gizmo that's, okay, let's say it's trying to hold down the dust. But then why do you have these fumes? That's not smoke from a fire. And why is it coming up through the wet dirt?
Let's put it this way. I remember hearing something about, people were talking about lava, like molten steel flowing in the basement, so they must have been, to talk like that, it had to have been pretty hot. You mentioned earlier about China having supposedly this contract to take all this building steel away. It almost seems like that's a whole other conspiracy theory right there, just with China, because you would think they would be questioning this reporter from the United States saying we didn't get none of your steel or something. I don't know. Have there been a lot of reports of people getting cancer and dying from the dust over the years?
There have been reports, but wouldn't you expect it to happen? Because some of the size of the dust particles were on the order of the size of DNA, about 1/100th of the size of red blood cells. In other
Wow.
words, it's inhaled directly into the bloodstream.
It
That's
literally-
got to mess somebody up.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Well, I wasn't aware of all the other buildings that went down. I knew about 7 and the Twin Towers, but I didn't know about the others. So obviously there were people in those other 4 buildings that were probably killed, I imagine. So
Well, they left. They were evacuated. It's only 9 stories. It doesn't take much to evacuate.
Right, okay.
I remember when they were talking about evacuating the Marriott Hotel, and I was kind of wondering why they were doing that then. That was before when the towers went poof. But again, taking in the data here, we see, this misting, and it can't be hot because we have some hydraulics there, and there's no reports of hydraulics that were getting cooked. And that nice, hydraulic arm there, that cylinder, with the seals and all that, 82 degrees centigrade or about 180 Fahrenheit is the highest operating temperature before permanent damage.
Wow. So, yeah, it looks like they were definitely trying to take care of some dust control with the dirt.
Or something.
Or saturate the whatever. Kind of like, I guess, if you spilled oil in your garage or something and you threw, something down to kind of clean it up.
Like kitty litter, clean stuff up. But I personally witnessed dirt coming and going. They
Really?
cart dirt out and they bring new dirt in and stir it around and cart it out. And
wow. And where did they take the dirt?
I don't know. But I bet you SAIC knows. They were in charge of the site.
Wow. It makes you wonder because the unions are pretty strong over there, and I know that I forget the dude's name. He's in Obama's office all the time. I'm sure that they had some.
Okay, so let's want to continue on here. Fuzzballs. We're just going to introduce this term that I used. It's different than fuzzy blobs. Fuzzballs. Okay. Now, you see what's that thick dust around the guy's feet?
Right.
You have this thick haze, and you see above his knees, it's pretty clear image. So that means the dust has settled out of the air.
Right.
How does it get kicked up so easily?
Does his face look like extra red to you?
Yes, it does.
It almost looks like he's got blisters on his forehead.
It's interesting looking. I used to refer to this as the red-faced guy with the hanky, but not knowing his name. That rough day at the office. But do note how the air is clear from the knees up, and we can see from the clock that it's about 15 minutes after the demise of Building 2, which was before about 15 minutes before Tower 1 went poof. And we know where this is. It's a few blocks north and east of the complex, over by NASA Street. But it's along that. That's where that clock is that you can see in the background. It's just north of Vesey Street, just east of Broadway. And that dust has settled out of the air, but it's so fine, it's so easy to kick up. And look behind him where the haze, how easily the dust gets kicked up. So it begs the question, how could you have dust settle out of the air that's that fine so that you have clear air from the knees up? Or did coarse dust land and become fine dust? Because look in front of his feet. Dust is settled out of there. It's just right where his feet are kicking it up that it comes up. Right. And that's very fluffy. Too fluffy to have settled out of the air that quickly. Next. We're just taking in observations. Okay, now's the fun part. Toasted cars and weird fires.
Oh, yes. I did not know about this until you. This is actually what got my attention when I heard you on the radio a couple weeks ago. You were talking about this. This is something I did not know about.
Next. And what I mean by toasted cars is toast. It's history. And this car over on FDR, under FDR Drive, I don't know how it got there. I don't know where it got toasted. But what I do know is that's weird. Look at the trim that goes around the windows, and it's flopped over like, with Jello.
Yeah, and the rubber is off of the tire, and I know tire fires burn a long time. It takes a long time to burn rubber tire, and it almost looks like it's completely gone.
That's actually a good point. Also, you see the steel belt from the rubber tire on the front wheel, but
there was a tire fire about 4 or 5 years ago in the Central Valley over here, and it burned forever. It seemed like they could not get that fire to go out. So this is very interesting. I wonder how long this picture. How many days do you know that this picture?
This picture was taken on the 12th of the 13th. I've got the date in the book, but I know that I've got from the 12th to the 13th, but not after that.
Tire that thing still should have been smoldering. It would have been going.
If it was a regular fire.
Right.
And if it was a regular fire, and the insides is so toasted looking, why is the gas tank intact?
Well, I am puzzled by the rubber though, because rubber's an insulator. If it was an electrical type thing, usually rubber would not be affected, but the rubber's on the metal, so maybe the rim, the steel rim, somehow it heated up possibly, which melted the rubber. I don't know. I'm speculating. I don't have any idea.
Yeah. We just take in the data here, and the next. I hope the animation works in this. Click on the next one, because there's different pictures that pop up. Okay, so we have these two. If you click again, you should. Good. It does pop up. And you see the lights, plastic lights on the top of the car.
Yeah, it looks like just over half of them are gone, and then there's 2 left.
There's something weird happened there. It looks like the inside is totally toasted. And if you had some rip-roaring fire, wouldn't those lights be sitting on a grill?
Yeah, that's for sure. They would have been melted. It's weird because it's just whatever happened on the other, because I that's a light bar on the top there, correct?
I think that's polycarbonate they make those out of.
At least 3 or 4 of those that look like they've been melted.
Or mangled or shriveled or something happened to them.
Right.
And it's tough to not make assumptions and just say, okay, something happened to their toast. What I mean by their toast, their history. You got to get another one. You can't fix this one. And looking at that abrupt boundary of the door, the front door is completely toasted, and the back one looks like, almost like it has a new wax job from the showroom floor.
Yeah, that is bizarre, because the heat would have made the paint peel off.
Okay, let's say the door was open. Well, the rip-roaring fire, if that's what it was inside, it would have been lapping out around the door.
Well, just you can see the back seat is completely pretty much burned out. The heat from that seat right there would have taken out the door panel on that back rear door, and that heat would have bubbled up the paint on the outside of the door. That just doesn't even make sense. You know what I mean? The heat on that.
It's nice and shiny.
Yeah, that's impossible, because if you had that fire roaring in the back seat, that door panel would have been gone. It'd be interesting to see what it looks like on the door panel on that rear door, to see if it's still intact.
You mean inside? We'll see that
in the back seat. Yeah, because on the other side of that door that's painted, it looks like it's not affected.
Yeah, we'll see that. Next. And the other side of this car looks like this. And even though the paint's kind of funny blistered, it's not like burnt. It's something else going on with it. But the weirdest part is that circular spot. It almost looks like somebody masked something out in the darkroom.
Right, I see that.
fire doesn't, do all or nothing. You have black, white, and shades of gray. This goes from black to white, with, almost a nanometer boundary.
It reminds me of, like, I heard people talk about EMPs. I wonder if that's had something to do with this.
We're just going to take in the data.
Right. Okay.
And
this reminds me of something, a picture you showed in the very beginning. Remember the ambulance picture?
Yep.
Okay, this is one thing I don't understand. These cars have this kind of deal going on, but the ambulance, I didn't see any signs like that. The ambulance would look like the back of that police car. There's nothing wrong with it, and it was literally right in the middle of this energy zone or whatever. So I was going to ask you about that.
There are some possibilities with that, but let's again just keep taking in the data until we can't help ourselves.
Okay,
it's
okay.
Great. Now, one thing we do know is that you have seals around doors, like rubber gaskets that keep out road noise.
Right.
And that's just something we'll take into consideration. Okay, next. And here we have where the various toasted cars are. That first loop is what I call the swamp. It's up West Broadway. Then we have the toasted car park. Then we have the cars we found under FDR Drive. Some I don't know their origin, but some were seen to go into apparent spontaneous combustion there. And one of the weirdest things is these EMTs who were driving across the Manhattan Bridge. One of them said you could feel the heat from the bridge. Well, It's not conventional heat because over by the towers, paper wasn't even burning. So why are they feeling heat from the bridge? It's kind of weird. But the South Street Seaport, there's some cars down there. This one first responder saw go into apparent spontaneous combustion. And, people need answers for questions, and they, what they see, they try to fit it with what they know of the world. And, this guy rationalized it must have been a fireball that got loose from the World Trade Center, rolled down the hill and hit the cars, because why else do they go into spontaneous combustion?
Wow.
That was the best he could do.
There's like a large section between Broadway and looks like South Street, that center section where they're...
I don't know.
Okay.
These are the ones that I have photos of or stories about.
Okay. But yeah, this is interesting because these cars are obviously a lot further away from the towers and they were affected like that, but yet that ambulance, nothing happened to it. That to me...
Right. That's a good thing to note. Now, the South Street Seaport, we have eyewitnesses there. The toasted cars under FDR Drive, I don't know where they were toasted. All I know is they were photographed there. So, but ones where I know where they're toasted, I'll say that. But those ones I don't know. And you can say it's kind of a weird place to store cars. Why don't they store the wheat checks there? It's but that doesn't mean they weren't toasted elsewhere. But okay, next. And this is West Broadway. You can see why I call it the swamp.
Okay.
And Building 7 is still in good shape, apparent good shape. We don't see that wall of stuff pouring out of it.
Okay, which was that the wall that we saw later with that smoke?
Right. With the fumes pouring out and spiraling around.
On that side right there that we're looking at.
Right. The video was taken from about that intersection.
I don't see the windows broken out, but it might be the picture might not be shown.
See where it says WTC 7 on the side of the building? Right above the W. It looks like that window might be open.
Okay. I was just wondering if, because that'd be interesting to know if those, how there was like 2 rows of windows that were gone?
Mm-hmm. There were ones it's a video where you hear the glass crashing out the window or falling on the street, just falling out of the window spontaneously. But
okay.
Now look at where it says post office on the left.
Okay.
Look at it, just past the E. You see that traffic light? You got a green light.
Oh wow, that's crazy. Okay, I just saw something else on the right hand side.
See where it says Fireman Hall? You got the lights on in the building.
Oh yes. Okay, on that same building on the Fireman Hall, do you see that column that says 30?
Yep.
Okay, just to the right of it, I see it looks like a bunch of holes on the side of the wall. Is that?
I don't know what that is. Other people have pointed that out. I don't know what it is.
Okay, and that tree looks somewhat stripped.
But it's leafy at the top. We don't know what the tree was like beforehand, but we also know this is into September, so we don't know what the tree is supposed to look like there. But what we do know is, look at that bus.
Yeah.
Where are the toasted marks on it? Like if you had these rip-roaring fires, does it look like that?
And the rubber tires are all gone.
It's kind of strange.
Yeah, that is bizarre. Now I could see I do see some black marks on the side where one could argue.
Brown.
Or brown, yeah. That could be like maybe look like it could be a flame, but I don't know. The lights are out too. Notice the headlights are gone.
Or the tail lights.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm looking. I'm looking at the back.
And there's the top corners. It looks like the plastic melted or something. It looks weird.
That is strange. And the door handles, huh? That's another thing that's weird.
Yeah. And go ahead and click. And we have this car right behind it, and it looks like it's already started to rust. Cars are made usually, more environmentally resistant. And we know this isn't too late in the day because we don't see the fumes pouring out of Building 7.
This is weird because the rubber tires are gone on that too.
Yep.
That's really strange.
It turns out every car for about 4 blocks is toasted up and down this road.
I mean, there's not even any part of the tire left. You don't even see any tire. Wow, whatever this thing is, it doesn't like rubber.
It eats rubber tires.
Wow.
That's sort of the way I look at it too. Okay, let's see. It likes to eat light fittings, and it likes to eat door handles. It also tends to eat door latches. You see a lot of pop trunk lids. Above, we see this car upside down, and notice you've been very perceptive with about the wheels, and this one has tires on it.
Oh yes.
And the underside looks nice. Yeah.
The bottom section is okay, and just the top is all toasted this time.
Well, also the one on both of them, the top one and the bottom one.
Yeah, I see that.
And especially that top one, it looks like essentially showroom quality in the belly of it. I'm sort of exaggerating there. Of course, we can't see because it's covered with dust. But it looks in good shape. Nice tires, nice underside. We don't see any, torn up areas or chewed up. Nothing toasted looking. Well, you see trees that have all leaves still on them.
Right.
And in the background.
Yeah, I see.
And in the branches, and is a vehicle. It looks like it did a face plant in the street with its rear end up in the air of the tires.
I just noticed something that behind in the upper photo, there's a round column, and it looks like there's a big hole in it. Do you see?
Yeah, can't be sure. Don't know. I need another image to tell more.
Like something like a laser beam just took it out right in the middle.
It could be just a dark spot. It's inconclusive, I would say. It could be just a dark area.
Well, I see
something black that's just plastered against it.
Okay, I guess so.
You look on the left-hand side of it, you get some black area. So we don't know. It's interesting to observe. We just don't know for sure.
Wow.
And the second picture, okay, you see, the vehicle's upside down.
Tires are fine.
Yeah. So we get this pattern kind of that if they get flipped, they don't get as toasted. All right, continue. But notice it's missing door handles, engines toasted, all window glass is missing. Missing door handles.
Door handles are usually made out of like a different type of.
We don't care so much. It's a pattern. We don't. Yeah, a lot of the detractors say, oh, of course it melted in a big fire. All we're saying is material specific. There's something different about the door handles and door latches compared to the hood of the car, and something different about the glass. So we're just looking at the patterns of what's missing or what's affected.
West Broadway and Barclay. Very difficult to breathe here, but look around.
Yeah, and so you can see all the door handles missing. And no traces of window glass left. Or the lip around the edge.
Behind me?
Right.
I don't know if you want to run that one more time.
Well, what I find odd is the windshield is the safety glass, and you can hit that with a sledgehammer, and it won't shatter. It's like one piece of glass. It'll
all crumbled up. Yeah.
Right, but I mean, there should be like a little ball of it.
What happened in here?
Wow.
Go. 3, 2. Oh man.
Well, what's crazy is the media never showed any of this stuff. I mean, the stuff that I'm seeing, this is the first time I've seen it since 9/11. I never even heard about any of this stuff. So, I mean, I probably wasn't watching the news all the time either, so I guess that could be my fault. But I don't recall any of these cars being in the reports. At least it wasn't dwelled on.
Sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I would say it's just vaporized. It's gone.
Go. 3, 2. Oh man.
Let me read more of the quote from Rene Davila. He said, while we're walking, I realize that we only have 2 people. I see my vehicle. The seats are covered. I still have my bag. This is his medical bag. I hold it like a trophy, like people collect basketballs. I haven't touched whatever the force was so strong it went inside the bag.
What I don't understand is these cars, this weird deal happened to these cars up to how many blocks away, or how half a mile away or so from the...
Well, yeah, it's some, and some was just, up a particular road and not the next road over.
But people, it did not affect people though walking around. That's what I find interesting.
Some places it was, but not the same. It could be people are hiding someplace. They're inside one of the buildings. I think that like in this picture, we notice in the bottom left-hand picture that minivans just stopped in the middle of the intersection. As it turns out, the vehicles got toasted right after the building's demise. So here the building's, going poof, and the dust clouds starting to roll out, and somebody's stuck in traffic. If it were me, I'd bail, and I'd run someplace else. Because you can't get your car out of that position fast enough, so you bail out of your car.
Well, that's what I was wondering, is I would think that, it would be feasible that some of these cars that are toasted, there could have been some people in the cars,
But if you were stuck in a car and the dust clouds rolling at you, wouldn't you get out and run?
Right. You would get out. I was just wondering if they got dustified, but I guess there's no way of knowing if they're... Right.
We didn't hear any reports of it, but like that bottom left-hand photo with that minivan there, it's right in the middle of the intersection. That other car just stopped it. They didn't run into each other. It's like they just bailed.
Yeah. I agree. They got out and ran. Yeah. And
in the upper left-hand photo, you see it looks like a body part there, but we don't need to get into any further than that. But then the police car in the bottom right-hand part of that upper left-hand picture, you see it's the same pattern, that it seems to stop right at the edge of the door, where the seal is of the door.
Right, I see that.
And the picture in the upper right photo, it looks almost like it was sandblasted, ready for a new paint job, that car in the foreground.
Well, it's interesting though, because the rubber acts as the rubber seal around the door somehow acts as a barrier, but yet the rubber on the tire doesn't.
Yeah, that's a good point. Now let's consider this possibility. Cars are up on rubber tires, and if they're building up a charge from the atmosphere and need to discharge it, the closest place is through the tires to the ground.
Okay, so like a capacitor storing.
Or trying to get through it, and whereas the doors aren't really going to ground.
Okay, I got you. Yeah, because it's isolated. The tire's literally sitting on ground, so there's a potential there.
Yeah. This is cool.
Yeah, I see that. Wow.
It's got some problem there. And missing a trunk lid. And in the upper right-hand picture, see the car on the far side has a trunk lid popped open. And then the vehicle in the minivan in the middle of the road there, it's got its doors popped open. We don't know if somebody left it open when they bailed out or what the deal is, but...
Right.
Okay.
Now, let's think about this. Don't you think there's a possibility there could have been some people in the bus? Or do you think they all got out right away, too?
If it were me, I'd be bailing out.
Right.
You see that dust cloud rolling down, and what I learned is the toasting didn't happen until after the dust cloud rolled out. The dust cloud rolled out and then went up and blocked out 100% of the sunlight. And then some first responders said they couldn't see their hand in front of their face, but thank goodness that car just lit up because now they could see where they were.
That's so weird because the dust didn't affect, because you had pictures of people that were covered in dust and they obviously were okay. So...
It was right after the dust rollout happened.
Okay.
Remember that. Yeah, remember that sequence. Okay, the next...
No, so these cars above, are these from the...
it says not from the WTC, only the one in the green with the green box around it.
Okay.
And you notice that one in the upper left corner, how it has the rings around it, where you see the burn lines.
Yeah.
And you also see scraps of glass left in the corners.
Okay.
And you also see in the upper right-hand picture, you see that between the passenger door in the front and the door in the back, you have black, white, and shades of gray.
Okay.
It's a transition zone. Of course, you see scraps of glass left. Okay, next. And the top two are from non-WTC, but you see the stuffing left that's partly toasted, partly not. As well as the gradation. It's the picture in the upper right corner. You see blue, black, and then some discoloration on the door. It doesn't look uniformly colored like a sandblasting for a new paint job. Right,
I see that.
Now, the picture at the bottom left, that's the inside of that wax spot car. I call it the wax spot car, that one that was, you saw lights still up above and the abrupt difference between the front and the back door.
That's kind of a trip because the tank didn't explode. Isn't that one of those Scott tanks? Or Scott?
It may have been chucked in there afterwards. Same with that newspaper.
Okay. And there's holes. You got some holes there.
It looks kind of eaten out.
Yeah. Wow.
But it's such 100% of the innards of that car kind of eaten up.
Well, the irony of this is that it almost seems like this material was what we saw getting dustified as the towers were coming down, and now it's not being dustified. It's actually other stuff that's being dustified, or whatever. Leather seats or upholstery, the foam in the seats, the carpet, the plastic door panels. Okay, what about the gas tanks? Because I would think that would be interesting if you could prove to somebody that none of the gas tanks exploded because if someone tries to tell you that this was a fire, then the gas tanks should have exploded. Well, it's just the car in the bottom right, it's too uniform. It looks like it's primered, like it's ready to go get a paint job or something. It's not a patchy here and there type thing where you just see some sporadic burn marks on the car. It looks like the whole car is uniform. You got to remember, you've got electric actuators that control the door lock mechanism on the door handles. So there could be something to, because you have an electrical system in a car, and it's hooked up to that 12-volt battery. So even though the car's not running, it's still it is interesting. I'm just trying to think why the door handles. I know the material is a little different, that the door handles are typically different material than the body of the vehicle. Well, another observation is I don't see any debris laying around, but yet a lot of these vehicles are crushed as if something fell on them. You know, like the that van in the bottom right that's kind of in the middle of the street. It looks like the back door hatch is all bent down on the back right corner. It looks like it's got a bow on it. But there's an actuator. It's called an actuator inside the door, and it basically, it's one side is grounded to the vehicle chassis, and then the other side is just 12 volts positive DC, and that's what that actuator, when you hit the unlock and lock button on your door, that's what unlocks that door mechanism, and it's part of your door handle, you know, inside the door panel. So I don't know. It seems like there's obviously something going on with electrical stuff, electrical field or something. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if that has something to do with it. It's 12
yeah, I like where you're going with that. There's something to do with it. You're not saying definitely, just okay. You know, there's something that seems like a trend here.
I'd be curious in the engine compartment if the battery was gone inside the engine compartment.
Right, right. Okay, you want to do the next one? My detractors often like to say, all the cars were towed, so it doesn't matter what happened to them.
Now that's a long ways away from the towers.
Yeah, and remember, we saw the intersection in between those two places was where that was unburned paper.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay, next. So here it is during toasting. We're going to see it before, during, and after. Here's during toasting. You see the orange, you know. What I call it Cheeto fires is just to acknowledge that it may not be a normal fire, but just, you know, it's this orange stuff that's coming out that looks like fire. Yep. And there's the unburned paper in between. Yeah, there's where it is, and that's the viewing angle. And there's that parking lot down there before they get toasted. Yeah, okay, they only have a few minutes left to live.
So that first tower is already gone, and now we're looking at the second.
Not yet. Nope, they're both standing, and how I know that is the street down below is not covered with dust through that intersection.
Okay, why can't I see the other tower?
It's directly lined up behind the
other one.
Tower. Yep.
Okay, interesting.
Okay, next. There's a close-up view, and until I found this picture, I thought that car out there, that black car in the driving area in the aisle, was white. You'll see why, but you can see all these fire trucks around. Yeah, you notice this. You don't see whether there's sunroofs there or not, but later you'll see that. But also notice all the fire trucks.
Well, I was just going to say there's emergency vehicles there. Did they get toasted?
Some did, some didn't.
It's probably about 20 or 30 emergency vehicles.
It seemed like if a vehicle was the right place at the right time, it was toast. Okay. And some things weren't toast. But it was, you know, regions like, you remember the swamp, I call it, West Broadway, where they're all toasted. And this row of them in the car park was toasted, but other ones weren't toasted there. And here they are leaving fleeing the Embassy Suites. And there's that black car. And, notice all the cars up and down that row. They have a few minutes left to live. Go ahead. And they are toasted.
Whoa. And this happened after the towers came down?
It didn't happen with the south tower going poof, but right after the north tower went poof.
Oh, wow. And, okay, this is tripping me out, because all these people from Embassy Suites, I mean, what kind of an explanation were they getting from people about these cars? I mean, because
they were running. They left the scene.
Well, this is so stupid. Look at the cars in front of Embassy Suites are fine, and then you look over in the back, and I guess.
You want to back it up and see when those ones in the foreground arrived. They may have come there afterwards.
Okay.
And yeah, see, they weren't there.
Okay.
The ones in the foreground. But take note of those other ones in the parking lot. Not all of them in the parking lot.
See the red truck in the front there? It's kind of by itself, and there's a white car behind it, and then there's a trailer behind it. Okay, let's go to the next picture. Okay, and I noticed the green shrubbery in the first picture. It looks like
you got toasted a little bit here.
Yeah, just real quick, the chain link fence looks affected as well. Oh yeah, okay. So
and also notice the white cars on the end. And there's a silver car there. Towards us.
There's a light post. I see. It's kind of hard to see, but it's kind of off the chain link fence, right in the center section where the green. It's like a bunch of green shrubbery growing.
A lot of furry shrubbery there that got toasted.
Okay. Yeah, the light post is still there. That's interesting. And okay, now the cars look like they have holes in the top, square holes or something.
Like their sunroofs all gave out. The latching mechanisms.
Right. This is so weird. I've never seen this before.
And notice in the parking lot, there were some that actually were able to get their cars out, but on the opposite side, not that row, but further into the car park, you see some that are all right and some that aren't.
It looks to me like the glass in Embassy Suites is broken on the face. It looks like there's some, unless I'm seeing things.
Yeah, I can't see it very clearly. Hot things glow, but not everything that glows is hot. Now think of a fluorescent light bulb versus an incandescent light bulb. They glow for different reasons. One's from resistance heating, and the other one is a plasma. And just keep that in mind. So if you see something glowing that's orange, doesn't necessarily mean it's hot. Especially if it's sitting on a piece of paper that's not burning. Next. There's the swamp. Next. And here we are. There's Patrick Connolly during one of the towers, demise. He ducked into that door of WTC7 and didn't look safe in there, so he came back out, and he said he couldn't see his hand in front of his face because all the dust had gone up and blocked out 100% of the sunlight. Then he said, thank goodness that car lit up because then he could see where he was going. And he started walking up the street to the right, and cars were lighting up as he passed them.
Wow.
So that tells us the timing, that it's after the dust cloud rolled out.
Right. Wow.
Next. So he's at point A, but here are all these cars down there that went and got toasted. Were you telling me that, flaming debris caught him on fire? Because how did it just fall down only into the canyon and not on any of the building rooftops on either side of that canyon?
It's like all those cars were acting like capacitors, and were storing the energy and then they discharged.
Yep. And you can see how far up it went from the slick street, from the the swampy look to it, right up to intersection E. Patrick Conley walked up to intersection C and then turned and went along Park Place over to point D. And you look at Greenwich Street where point D is, and you don't see much toasting there. And it just it's one street or the other. It just happened to be the wrong place, the wrong time, parked in the wrong place.
Yeah, it looks like they needed to calibrate their toy a little bit better. They were a little bit off.
Or whatever the deal was there. But we're going to go look at intersection C. Yeah. He's getting good at this. So here we are, this is part of the swamp there. Probably there's the bus that's toasting away. Okay, but first let's enjoy this picture on the left here. We see unburned paper, and we can still see it here, unburned paper, and then you have, the trees aren't toasted, but only the cars, only the vehicles are toasting.
Well, this tree, it's kind of hard for me to tell, but it does look like a lot of the leaves are gone on the one on the tree.
It might be, we don't know what its health was before that. We can see it's not burning in front of us.
Right.
And the next one over looks like it's got a lot more green stuff on it. We don't know if one's sick and one's not, but what we do know is at this moment in time, the paper isn't burning. Only the vehicles are.
I just thought of something. The light post. Okay, let's assume that everything.
Hang on. Watch the firefighters. See, they go doo-doo-doo. Well, you don't. It doesn't play real smoothly.
Okay, they don't care about the fires. They're walking through there.
Yeah, ho-hum, going for lunch break.
That's kind of weird.
Wouldn't you worry about a car exploding?
So I wonder what they're really thinking. Were they saying, "Oh, those are not real fires"? I mean, it almost.
It's actually what you read in the book. I've got some of the testimony of the first responders. They said, like if they're bored, they put out car fires. But they said, like nothing else to do, so might as well put out car fires. But initially, the water had no effect on the car fires.
I'm wondering if that's when the effect was discharged, and then whatever, and then.
That's what it seems like.
You know what I'm saying?
It was grounded so it could discharge.
Right, exactly. Once the rubber off the wheel was gone, then it stopped, which would explain why some of the cars looked like the paint job was okay. As soon as the rubber on the tire grounded out onto ground, that would complete the circuit.
It would stop it.
Right.
So here, hot things glow, but not everything that glows is hot. And what we see there is this, on the left-hand side, you see it looks like paper, but you see what looks like hot glowing. But if something's hot glowing, paper would be burned up by then.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And where are the flames?
That would be just like hot coals in a fireplace. I mean, you put paper anywhere near it, it would spontaneously combust. The paper would be gone.
And for that to be that hot, that it's white hot, you don't have white hot on top of paper. And then also, if it's hot molten metal, molten in a puddle means it's horizontal on the surface, and it's flat, like a lake.
I'm curious. What did the NIST report? What did the official report say about these type of fires? Did anybody question it? Really?
Oh.
Who took these photos?
Oh, various. So the sources are in my book.
Oh,
There's a variety of sources.
Because I'm assuming they took the photo because they were tripping out on it. See, that's weird. So we got to take a picture of this. Wow.
And in the right-hand photo, you have this igloo cooler and a plastic-looking trash can. And so can that be white hot from heat? Because those things aren't melted.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And also white hot, if it's hot, if it's glowing because it's hot, That takes like 1200 degrees centigrade, and aluminum alloy melts at around 600 centigrade, 660 for pure aluminum, and that doesn't look wilted.
No.
And next. So yeah, aluminum melts, down there at like 650 centigrade, and white hot is much hotter. So why isn't the aluminum melted? That might be just the sound of the crossing out thing. Next. Looking again at that scale on the right.
So whatever this is, it's not discharging completely to where...
Or not necessarily. This, what we're just noticing is this can't be hot.
Okay.
And so it makes you kind of start thinking of, plasma. And on the left, there's the end of an aluminum cladding trough, and it's solid. And this is one of the things that hit me. And Stephen Jones kept saying aluminum is silver at all temperatures. And so you're led to believe this glowing thing can't be aluminum. Well, yeah, it is aluminum, and it's glowing. But aluminum, if it's hot enough to glow, it's a puddle. This isn't a puddle. Houston, we have a problem.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know much about melting temperatures, so I'm kind of naive to that, but I see what you're saying. That's interesting, because the aluminum would definitely be affected by that if that was a real fire. Wow.
The firefighters reporting molten metal like a slurry or a steel mill or a volcano. Those are quotes. Giant pools.
What about the pictures of them dragging oxygen hoses all over the steaming supposed hot metal? If it were that hot, you wouldn't dare do that, would you?
Well, we do have the infrared photos of the molten metal.
Well, again, what melted the metal? Was it heat?
That's a very good question. And I thought that was wonderful that Jesse Ventura had noticed that he had this oxyfuel hose draped over the surface, and you got somebody at the end of it. Are you going to hold that, that cutter, the oxyfuel hose, draped over something that's 1100 degrees or something? I mean, that's crazy.
What are we looking at on the what sections of the scene are we looking at here?
There's it's some part of ground zero.
Okay.
And you see these steel workers are cutting something with a cutting torch.
Right.
And they have their oxygen hose draped over the pile.
Yeah.
And if that pile is that hot, are you going to do that and stand at the end of that thing?
No, definitely not.
So it doesn't seem like it really is that hot. And plus you have paper that's not burning on the surface.
Right.
Next. And remember that famous picture in the upper left corner that's often cited as for showing heat. Well, I'm not saying it's a fake picture. I'm saying it doesn't represent what was actually going on there, because see where point E is?
Yes.
That's right in front of building 3. And so in the picture in the upper right, that's right where the arrow's pointing. It's supposed to be 819 Fahrenheit. Water boils at 212 Fahrenheit, so the guy right below there should look like a boiled chicken.
Yeah, that's true.
Water isn't boiling, so it can't be hot. So there's something else that it's measuring other than heat.
Wow.
This is right on 9/11. One of the water mains broke, and that's why the West Street was flooded.
And we're supposed to believe airplanes did this.
Something.
I mean, this is.
Yeah, identified by the passport. As I like to joke and say, so the guy driving the airplane spooled the window down and chucked that passport out, and just before toasted the plane.
Yeah. Right.
And here we go with the swamp. You have toasted cars, missing the engine lids, and one on the right, you got the pattern now. So you got a toasted rear tire, and that seems to stop the process. Mm-hmm. Nice bushy green trees.
Yeah.
But why doesn't the paper burn in the street?
Right, and that engine looks like the hood's gone on that one car behind on the right side.
Something has happened inside of that looks mighty strange.
The windshield is actually not out. It looks like, is the windshield gone or is it still there?
Yeah, I don't see the windshield. The side windows are gone, and the one in front of it, it looks like it's got stuff. It's missing a windshield. Right, looks like the windshield's covered with dust, but it's missing the side windows.
Mm-hmm.
And the car in front of it looks like it's completely missing its windshield and the side windows.
Now,
and maybe even the back window because you can see through it.
Glass is basically silica dust, right?
Yeah, it's a pattern that we see. Also, there's some other information about the marble that we see.
Okay.
But Patrick Connolly was walking up to Park. Remember, he made that left turn at Park?
Yeah.
And he was walking through this intersection right about the time these photos were taken. And these things I called glowing Cheetos. We're not going to confuse those with food, but it's just to give a characteristic to something, so we can refer to it. These thingies on the ground that are glowing. We're not going to say hot glowing metal because we don't know that it's hot. And notice that van, especially the black and white picture where I tweaked the contrast some. You can see it's a side fire. It's just the side of the van is burning, or appears to be burning. What's that?
Unless it's the plastic tail light on the van. Is that a possibility? Maybe the tail light?
It looks like it's a pretty big flame for just, a little light. This is a pattern you see other places too. It's just a side fire. Like, what's with that?
Yeah, that is interesting.
It is watched somewhere in the middle, and you notice there's a
The women go in and out of Ground Zero up to 10 times a night, often until 2 in the morning, delivering whatever it is rescue workers need to do their jobs, like the ones working in the hotspots.
Steel-toed boots is one of the biggest things.
Steel-toed boots?
Steel-toed boots. Out still on the rubble, it's still, I believe, 1,100 degrees. The guys' boots just melt within a few hours, and they're burning their feet.
I'm not aware of any reports of burned feet.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you that if there were anybody that talked about that. Huh.
And we heard this is one of the things the truthers would repeat over and over again, along with the hot molten metal. Stephen Jones especially. And what I would like to say is if my steel oven is melting, certainly the turkey inside is more than well done.
Well, this is interesting because the steel-toed boots, well, you've got the rubber sole, which would be similar to the tires on the cars.
Bingo. You're good at this.
Okay, but I don't understand why the it doesn't, whatever this is doesn't seem to affect the person. Just something about that rubber doesn't.
We're at the outskirts of the effects, so it isn't like all or nothing. Okay. It is a gray area.
Wow.
Yeah, check out this Rudy Giuliani one.
There were fires of 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit below the ground. I could be standing here and you could be standing there, and I could be describing to you, Governor, the site, and then a fire would break out in between us. And it was just by luck or the design of God that we weren't killed.
Yeah.
How do you know what the temperature was?
I think he just threw a number out there.
Or somebody had told him that, and he just kept repeating it.
Right.
Without stopping to realize. When I first showed this, I had a little devil character that would kind of creep up in the bottom with his pitchfork, saying, like, "Where exactly was Rudy Giuliani?" But right. Just trying to be silly. I mean, you feel sorry for the guy though, because no matter what you think of him, he wasn't trying to look like a fool there. He was doing the best he could with the information he had. He's not a material scientist. He probably saw what looked like spontaneous combustion and assumed it was 2,000 degrees, like somebody said it was.
Wow.
And was just repeating it without thinking. And how many people have repeated, all the steel shipped to China immediately afterwards, and Larry Silverstein's pull it, stand on orders, put options. You go down this long laundry list of things that have just been repeated over and over again.
One thing that's always puzzled me was the airline, because somehow, how could because obviously the airline had to have been part of this whole cover-up or whatever conspiracy, because if let's just assume there were no airplanes, obviously they would have had to played along with this whole thing, right?
Yeah, you can. There's a lot of different stories you can speculate, and we're not in a position to sort them out. Remember, know what you know that you know.
And then there supposedly were people that a bunch of people bought those put options on the airline stock, and so obviously there were people.
But was it really? It's statistically not a huge swing. There are some, and it could be argued like, well, okay, maybe it's just more than normal, and there's a whole lot of things you can look into about that.
Well, that paper that I forwarded to you, that I forget the guy's name, Jenkins, I think, he was trying to argue that everything was on the ground, all the building materials, because the building's basically empty. He tried to argue, and that everything was on the ground, and so
what he's there for.
It's I don't understand, because we covered the pile. There's no pile of debris, so
and you saw the dust going up and up and up.
Right.
And when was talking about some dust sample, I said, well, he's talking about what percentage of this, that, and the other. I said, well, did you sample the dust in the upper atmosphere? How do you know what went where? You have a biased sample if it's whatever you can scoop up off the ground, because you don't have the airborne stuff.
So whoever was playing with this toy, you could speculate that they paid him to write a paper, basically, something like that.
Or recruit him. And
right.
Actually, Stephen Jones recruited Greg Jenkins, and Jenkins was so proud of it, he wanted to brag about it, and he sent around the email for it, and it ended up in my hands as well as a few other people's. Oops. And it's on my website. But still, let's look at the logic of it. What I did learn from Greg Jenkins, though, and I did acknowledge him in my Dirt series, that I learned this setup that Fetzer did. James Fetzer set up this ambush interview thing. He tricked me into being in a place, and then they had Jenkins surprise me with his ambush interview. He said he was going to have 1 or 2 questions and a piece of paper and pencil. Okay, and then he came back out of the bathroom, and the lights are on, the camera's rolling. But yeah, I wasn't presenting anything. I didn't have a slide presentation. I didn't have anything. Jenkins had this big book he'd been studying, and the picture he used was kind of silly. That it was the Tower 2 with the snowball, with the rest of the building still intact below and 2/3 of the building missing, approximately. Like, where'd the building go? But what I learned from this, and what I really thank him for, is that he showed me what needed to be covered up. Oh, don't look at the dust. No, dust is coarse. It's 1.3 millimeters in diameter. It's not fine. It's not fine. Whatever you do, don't think it's fine. Oh, and it doesn't go up. It doesn't go up. Panic. It doesn't go up. It all goes down. Oh, okay. So it's important that the dust goes up, and it's important that it's super, super fine. Mm-hmm. Got it.
Yeah,
that's what Jenkins taught me. He probably has a good idea of how it was done to know what needed to be covered up. What I started to say earlier about this, in learning about how things are done, is, I didn't study the JFK thing, but right away I knew what the grassing knoll was. It's the lie behind door number 2, in case you don't like the lie behind door number 1. Just like thermite.
Yeah.
They don't expect you to believe the official story. So it's the unofficial story. Here's another thing that folks may not realize, and I'm going to just put out this hypothetical story. When people assume it was the U.S. government that did it, I say, not necessarily. Here's a scenario, just hypothetical. Let's say you're one of about 5 people who want to take over the U.S. or the world. Well, you can't go in the front door because the U.S. military come get you.
Right.
So, you have this gizmo that can dustify the towers, or somebody who does have it, and you can hold a gun to their head. And so you dustify the towers, and you start a truth movement from within the U.S., and you get people to hate their government, to tear their country up from within, to hate their government so badly they want any government but the one they have. And then you walk in the front door, and they welcome you with open arms.
Yeah, that's, I guess anything's possible.
And we don't know who's being blackmailed, who has a gun to their head or whatever. All I know is the truth is the truth.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things to me where it seems our government, well, just with the NIST report and everything else, it seems like our government
maybe being blackmailed.
I guess the reason why I've always looked at it like the government had to have something to do with it was because, I mean, the Patriot Act in Afghanistan, Iraq, I mean, they already knew they were going to war.
But we don't know who's driving that, and that's such a big can of worms. How I look at it is, if we know how to tell the difference between truth and fiction, we are empowered. And also, what was demonstrated on 9/11, this technology is a proof to the world. John Hutchison has done work with this type of thing, something like it, can produce all of the same, phenomena. But who'd believe it? You have to go to his lab to see it. How many people can fit in his lab at a given time? But this technology that was demonstrated on 9/11, the entire planet saw it, witnessed it. They just were told they saw something else. But once they realize what they saw, they are empowered. They know that free energy technology exists.
Right. Wow.
We'll come back and talk about the weather.
Yeah. Well, the weather is, yes, I do have questions on that.
The important thing to take away from this is know what you know that you know, and know that everything else you don't know. And if we just make observations of the evidence, you're safe. I could just make a couple of comments here without going into our slides, but, well, you can't predict anything like a hurricane. Right.
Right.
So how do you know exactly when it's going to turn around? That high pressure system. They thought it was going to turn around on day 1. It didn't. Well, then they thought it was going to turn around on day 2. It didn't. Then they thought it was going to turn around day 3. It didn't. Meanwhile, it's barreling straight towards New York. Then they thought it was going to turn around day 4. Thank goodness it did, because they didn't have any more room left. The outer bands were right over the end of Long Island. It was raining at Cape Cod.
Wow. So
and this thing was going straight towards Manhattan with open water in between.
Was it a Category 1 on September 11th, or what category?
It was Category 3 late on the 10th.
Really?
On the 11th, when it kind of stopped and started to turn, it went down to Category 1. It didn't ever lose hurricane strength until, I think it was the 17th or something. And it turned around and went up the East Coast further, and it stayed at Category 1. It didn't fall apart. It was actually more cyclonic energy in the storm system than Katrina.
Yeah.
How can you be 100% sure, so sure it's going to turn around the nick of time, that you don't warn anybody to evacuate Manhattan? How long does it take to evacuate Manhattan?
Do you convey that in depth in the chapter on weather in your book? Do you talk about that quite a bit?
I don't get into speculation, but I talk about these things it begs the question, wonder why they didn't do that. With Hurricane Rita, they did voluntary evacuation, then it became mandatory evacuation because they thought that's where it was going, and then it diverted for whatever reason, diverted at the last minute, went north and west. And, just in case it went to Houston, they evacuated. Well, this thing is open waters. It's aimed right towards Manhattan. My thing isn't, and I'm not speculating on weather control or whatever. What I'm asking is, why weren't the people warned? Unless you're 100% sure.
It seems clear that there must have been some kind of. Well, I know you're probably familiar with HAARP, the big system in Alaska, and I guess there's some other places too.
You know what I call HAARP?
What do you call it?
You know what HAARP stands for?
I don't have it memorized, but I've
a high amplitude advancement of real propaganda.
Okay.
Because whatever happened on 9/11 was somebody's classified technology. We're not saying whose, but somebody's classified technology. And by definition, if it's classified technology, it's not in the public domain. So don't go looking there. We don't really know what HAARP does. HAARP is just another name for bin Laden, as far as I'm concerned. HAARP this, HAARP that, HAARP. People don't know what HAARP does, but they're just blaming stuff on HAARP, just like blaming it on bin Laden. It's just another boogeyman to catch-all boogeyman. I'm not saying that HAARP is nothing. I'm saying we don't know what it does. So claiming HAARP did it is it's just a guess in the dark. But see, we've been going through the evidence of what this thing can do. We can describe it. We don't need to know the name of it. We can give it our own name. And I do have a name for it. I call it magnetic electrogravitic nuclear reactions. It describes what it does.
Okay. Right.
And so, but when you go, I really carefully avoid, the trendy terms that people just drop as like name dropping.
Well, I know from what I understand about HAARP, I know the towers are equally spaced. They shoot up radio frequency into the ionosphere, and that's why I was thinking that it almost seems like I know frequency and static electricity is part of the thing with John Hutchison. That's why I was thinking that there might be something to that HAARP thing, because they're using high voltage to shoot up these radio frequencies.
We need to cover more evidence first before we go on. So yeah, just think in your mind, kind of review what we've been through, what we've covered, and realize what and just digest it and let it settle. Sort it away into your storage bins mentally, of know what you know that you know. And we've carefully gone through this amount of evidence, and know what you do know, and for your own sake. Not not what I've told you, but what you think.
Mm-hmm.
And what you've seen, and what are the most interesting parts, what are the weirdest, just look at all the different things we've covered so far without, I know it's hard to, without jumping to somewhere else, but just know what you know that you know, and nobody can take that away from you. And you also become very much more confident if you stay within what you know that you know that you know, because what already, I think you realize you know enough to be able to define a problem. We can't have everybody else wrong. So, and trying to rationalize like the billiard ball thing, well, the building gets going so fast that it goes faster than free fall of gravity. Okay, and these cars over by FDR Drive, and I kind of joke about it and say, so this is, it must be thermite. The people who really believe in thermite, I refer to the thermite eating pigeon poop over on FDR Drive. It gets to the point where they keep adjusting. It's like fixing everything with Band-Aids. What about this? What about that? And instead of looking at the whole picture and wanting to know the truth. If somebody, if it was thermite, how did the thermite cause, cars a block away, cars 2 blocks away, cars 3 blocks away? How did, it toast it here? How did it toast it there? Well, let's see if you get a pigeon that eats thermite, flies over to FDR Drive, poops on the car right here, and there was some grease on the car, and that's why the pigeon poop didn't get there. And then somebody comes along with a cigar and puts it down and somehow lights the and then what about the next car? Well, then they got this other bunch of just contorted stories, and
wow.
It's like, is somebody trying to figure out what happened, or are they trying to somehow protect their old view of reality, of what they thought was reality?
Now, what's the response from your immediate family, Dr. Wood?
It's changed. My dad, when reading the book, it was like vindication for a lifetime. It was the most wonderful set of emails. At first, you started out with, well, did you get permission to use these photos? And then pretty soon he realized these people would want you to use these pictures without bringing them into it, and are glad that you're taking them forward. And then he comes to the part about, well, I guess you have to say it wasn't thermite and all this stuff. You got that covered. And then, oh my gosh, Congress has got to know about this. You got to tell Congress about this. You got to send them this book. And then pretty soon it gets later chapters. He goes, uh-oh, I think Congress already knows. Then he gets to later chapters. He goes, uh-oh, we're in a heap of doo-doo. Mm-hmm. You see him go through that transition. He read the book 3 times.
Wow.
He's 91 years old.
91. Wow.
Yep. I read it first a couple of years ago that I had this publisher who refused to publish it and refused to let me out of the contract. And, you never know when you run out of time. So I printed out from my computer and spiral bound it and sent it to my dad. That was the first copy read. Then he got the hardbound ones.
That's amazing. That. At 91, he's still got all is he educated as well, like you?
Yes, he's not a scientist. Political science and education. He was a college administrator, and he's kind of got a phobia of science, I think, but can understand logical thought. And could understand the equations. Okay, you step around the equations. They're really there for the people who need to see equations, who want to check equations. So it isn't required for the thinking. Like, you saw enough from what I showed you about the timing to realize that something weird with the timing. Why didn't the ground shake for longer?
Right.
What are the implications? Think of the implications of this.
What kind of response are you getting from other nations from your all this information?
The issue is that the truthers have been out there cluttering things up, and people assume that I'm part of that. And if they see that the truthers are nonsense, they assume I am. It's getting away from that. But there's a couple places that have just recently turned around and realized, wait a minute, we've been led down the garden path in the wrong direction. And there's some upheavals that are kind of going on. Out of the thousands of books that have sold, virtually everyone has said, everyone but one has said, this is amazing. And they say it's also a short course in critical thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Because it takes you through it. The beauty of it is, and it just is the way it happened. That somebody who's got pride, they don't really want this to be true, and so they dig their heels in if you're talking to them, and you just get nowhere. They're going to dig their heels in. What about this? What about that? What about that? Well, if you give them a book and send them on their way, they don't have anybody to save face to. Here they are on their own, their quiet room, with a book. It's just them and the book. And okay, they sneak a peek and start looking more and more, and so they don't worry about their pride then. They'll start reading it. And as you read it, it gradually, you saw how the discussion was tonight. You gradually get into it, and you start seeing more, and it builds on itself. And as you go through the book that way, you start realizing and start getting better at it. And actually, the rolled up carpet part is towards the end of the book. It sort of gives you a test drive for your new skills. Like look and say, what's wrong with this picture? Where are the buckled beams and columns? And you start being able to spot those things pretty easily. Like, what have we here? And it jumps out at you. It just reinforces itself more and more. And it's the person who's reading the book that is then empowered. They know They know better how to think, how to know truth from fiction.
Well, I think a lot of it, and this is why I think a lot of people think this is all a big conspiracy, because the media hasn't really done their job. A lot of this stuff that you present, the media never really showed this stuff. I saw a video in 2001, I think around the early part of 2001, there was actually a TV show that had a passenger jet flying into the Twin Tower. I don't remember what the name of it was. But
it was, let's see, I forgot. It was in the spring of 2001.
Right.
I'm forgetting what the name of it was now, too.
But that would be another example of what you're talking about, how they're conditioning people for that type of activity. And then when it happens, people are like, oh, wow, I just saw that on TV about 4 months ago or whatever. Yeah. On the plane going into the tower, I was thinking possibly the energy field was already active in the building, which allowed the plane to go, through the steel beams. It's probably stupid to think that way, but I was thinking, well, how could the plane go through the tower? Steel beams, but that's another weird thing.
Right. It's a whole other can of worms. And I set that aside because, as we've seen, that the building mostly turns to dust in midair. Real planes can't do that, and neither can fake planes.
Right.
And so the planes become, I call it the getaway car. People will argue about their emotions, about their beliefs, and go round circles and never solve the problem. Even though you'd seen the video beforehand, you hadn't read the book, and even though you'd seen these same slides, there was still new stuff.
Right. I am picking up on things that I hadn't really noticed before. So
it's like when my dad read the book 3 times. He picked up more stuff. After he read it the first time, he went, wait a minute, there's footnotes, and there's stuff in the footnotes. And he went back and, put that in, and then, kept, and you pick up more each time.
Right.
Because it's not just a simple story. So you can see it's not anything you can sum up in one-liner talking points. Was it thermite or was it energy weapons? Yes or no? Yes or no? It's not something you argue about. This is a process where you look at the evidence, and this is all about the evidence.
I did find it interesting that it was just the watchtower, or the watch, WTC. What's it stand for? The World Trade Centers.
World Center, yeah.
That all just only those buildings. I wonder what's the conspiracy there? Why the World Trade?
Oh, everything with a WTC prefix.
Yeah, right.
And there was a little bit of an oops, I think, because Bankers Trust, across the street. And then also, you remember Fighterman Hall, the one with the lights still on?
Right.
By the toasted bus? When Building 7 went poof, it infected Fighterman. What I mean by infected is even after they repaired it, it still continued to come apart.
Really?
Bankers Trust was that one with the gash in the front, and they repaired the gash, and then kept doing tests and decided they needed to take apart the building. So you repair a building to dismantle it, and they just about a year ago they finally got it down.
So this acts like a cancer then, almost like it
Yep.
won't go away. So I wonder how they handled that problem with the bathtub as far as rebuilding.
Interesting. It still had a problem. You notice, in the base of Tower 1 and Tower 2, they just have a fountain there.
Yeah.
You know how fountains make people feel better because the ions.
Yeah.
I'll leave you with that.
Morning. People ask me why I have been so attracted over the years to hurricane coverage, but there's risk involved. There is, the peril of not knowing what's going to happen, that adventure, and it's pitting yourself against an enemy. It's like war, only no one is shooting at you specifically. That's what the allure, but there is nary a storm that the juices don't flow, and you look and check it out.
Look at that. Remember that? When that? I watched that live.
And maybe a star on YouTube. You got to get up close and personal. And
this was Hurricane Ike, I think.
That was recent. That was, wasn't this Rita?
You would know.
You know what? I think it was Rita, isn't it?
Rita in Galveston, Texas. Yeah, Galveston. And, obviously Katrina before that changed so many of our histories. It was so traumatic. And it's one funny thing I think of if only a hurricane had come on 9/11. Remember, they didn't know how to use instruments, the terrorists. They took off in Boston, and they literally, after they took over the aircraft, they steered by line of sight. And it was that crystal clear September day.
Sure was. Beautiful.
And if it were only one of these weather days, history would have been rewritten. And I think about that a lot now, and especially this time of year.
So are you
we're the peak of hurricane season.
Yeah, you're celebrating 40 years?
40 years, imagine that, isn't it?
40 years in the business.
And, longevity has its own revenge. I've outlived like 15 generations of TV critics. Yeah. They all predicted I'd be done in a couple of weeks.
Well, do you still get...
Everyone has those stories, right?
Oh, yeah.
Dr. Judy Wood.
Hi, Joy. Thank you for taking my call. Am I loud and clear?
Yeah, you are. Go ahead.
Judy, you have misrepresented the facts concerning Hurricane Aaron. I live here in hurricane country, Florida. I track all the hurricanes. Aaron hit Corpus Christi, Texas, 15 August 2007. Your opinion concerning 911 are not consistent with the facts provided on 911 ripple effect, last man out, Richard Gage's blueprint for truth, loose change final cut, Zero, an investigation into 911, and many other video documentaries. I don't know what planet you've come from.
Okay. I guess he's gone. I don't know what happened to Steve.
As for Hurricane Aaron, they did not retire that name. It has been used several times. It was the first hurricane, I believe, of the 2001 hurricane season.
All right. Let me go back to George. George, ask her one question that you would like to get answered.
Well, I don't think MIT does much in conspiracy theory, especially at those levels.
Is that a question?
But we do talk about...
I'll answer that one question.
If I may ask my question. I remember 9/11 very clearly, and you talk about Hurricane Aaron coming and having some effects. And I do recall almost every picture, in fact, every picture I've seen of New York on that day, the sky was blue. Clear blue, not a cloud in the sky. If you go and follow the track of her...
Do you have a question or
no, wait a second. Okay, he's asking the question about obviously about the hurricane. I never heard about the hurricane. This is hurting, I think, the situation because we can't verify some of your so-called evidence here. I mean, I'm trying to. I'm wanting to. Well, it's also that we're saying hurricanes are things that are documented.
Yeah.
And if you have it documented and nobody else does, then where did
the National Hurricane Center has it documented? This is another issue. Why has it not been publicized?
So here we have a host of a major radio show saying, your so-called evidence, and if you're the only one who has it documented, nobody else does. As well as the guy who called in saying I was a liar, as well as the other guy they had tied in who was claiming that MIT is not into conspiracy theories. And there's a whole lot of evidence, I think, that imagine a radio host being like that. That takes a lot of guts.
Well, one thing that struck me was this guy that called in said that he tracks hurricanes. How is it that he was not aware of it? Are there certain sites that are open to the public where people can track hurricanes, or how would he track a hurricane?
I've gotten this picture off of the National Hurricane Center website. And there's Manhattan. It came for 4 days in open sea. It was aimed straight towards Manhattan. And then after, the morning of 9/11, around 8 a.m., it was about the closest to Manhattan. It kind of, slowed down and hung out there. It spread its wings wider, and then it packed up and headed out of town that afternoon.
That's an unusual path, the way it kind of hung a right there. Is that? Can
you back up a slide, please?
Do we have any history of hurricanes doing that type of pattern?
I looked at all of the various patterns over the past 100 years, and I couldn't find any of them that did that. That doesn't mean it's impossible. It's just that I've not seen any do that. Usually they come in, go through the Caribbean, and swish up the East Coast.
Well, it's very unusual the way it makes that real tight turn on the right. That's weird.
And that it was the closest to Manhattan. Now, see where it's bright red? That stretch, there's a yellow on either side. That's where it was Category 3. So it slows down, and it kind of stops. You know how a figure skater puts out their arms and they slow down? It spread wider right when it slowed down, and then it packed up and headed out of town. It didn't lose hurricane status until, got up there several days later.
What do those numbers represent that are next to
the time of day, the date, and the time of day, universal time.
So the first number would be the date.
Yep, and you see where it was on the 11th.
So on the 11th it made that turn to the right.
Yep, it was the closest to Manhattan on the morning of the 11th.
Okay.
And it also spread its wings out. It kind of stopped for about 24 hours surrounding that time.
Is that where
was the center of it?
I see like a yellow dot right before it turns. Is that the 24-hour period?
No, that's what that is where it was Category 2. Yellow is Category 2.
Okay.
And red is Category 3, and the pink is Category 1. So you can see it really, it's like a runaway train, really revved up, and then as it makes around the turn. It slows down.
Is that strange for a hurricane to, because I thought, it was my understanding, I don't know much about weather, but I thought hurricanes build up their momentum, that if it's a hurricane 3 or Category 3, is that normal for a hurricane to go down like that?
Well, it was also doing battle with a high-pressure system.
Oh.
But exactly where it did battle with the high-pressure system is very curious also. Next.
If only a hurricane had come on 9/11.
On the morning weather report, so if you have this hurricane aimed right towards New York City, it's a Category 3 the day before, and up in the wee hours, and it's aimed towards Manhattan. Are you gonna? What are the bets you're going to place on it that's going to turn? After all, the previous 3 days they said it was going to turn.
Well, that's pretty risky when you consider the strange thing is it seems like the media loves these types of things. That's all you'll see on TV. Whenever
they milk it for all they can get.
Well, I mean, even right now, the East Coast is getting hammered with snow and storms, and they like to dramatize that. So I'm kind of I find that very bizarre that nobody.
And Geraldo shows up with his microphone and wades through the water there, like he did with Rita.
Yeah, that's strange. And I honestly I didn't know about the hurricane, and I think most people don't because it was a very clear day that day. It looked beautiful from the video that I've seen. So that's pretty strange.
As it turns out, if you were looking directly east, you would have seen it. It was right at the edge of Long Island. It was actually raining at Cape Cod. The outer bands were there.
What about like boats in the harbors and stuff along the coast?
Oh, they took them out to sea, and they may have shut down. They're talking about shutting down. I don't remember if they did or not. Atlantic City beaches because the undertow they're worried about.
Right, because
it was very subtle. Right. Now the picture on the left, except for the red arrows, and I'm just pointing out the lightning all around the perimeter of the country. But the pictures on the left came from, except for those arrows, came from 10 minutes to 15 minutes before the North Tower got its hole on 9/11. In other words, there's nothing else to report yet. But where's the hurricane? And on the right, I've superimposed where the hurricane was at that moment.
Wow.
That it wasn't reported. In a weather friend of mine said, how much effort does it take to click on the mouse to put an icon there?
Well, it does seem interesting, though, if it was that close that the weather was so clear. Do we have any kind of an explanation for that?
Well, that's what weather would be right outside the outer bands. You see where those outer bands are? It's right at the coast. If you standing in Manhattan, you could see the outer bands of the hurricane.
Okay, so there was cloud cover. It was darker because I saw blue skies. That's why I'm.
If you look straight up, I'm saying stand in Manhattan. You look east, you would see the outer bands. If you look straight up, you see blue sky.
Okay, got it.
If you look west, you see blue sky. But if you looked east, you saw the outer bands. Actually, there's the beginning of my chapter 20, I think it is, shows that image. Next. So we're going to look at just what the data look like. And so we have this high pressure system moving in. You see how the arrow, the green and red arrow shows it moving in. At the same time, the low pressure system, the hurricane, is moving in from the west. And look where they met and did battle. Look, this is the data from JFK Airport, which is just a few miles out of Manhattan.
Okay.
You see the high pressure system, that green line moving in. I show the green arrow, or green and red arrow going up. And then the other one is, you can see the effect of the hurricane's arrival where it starts going down. So the high pressure system is moving in, we have a pressure buildup, and then it drops because it's doing battle with a hurricane, which is a low pressure system. High pressure systems rotate in the opposite direction of hurricanes. Hurricanes in the northern hemisphere rotate counterclockwise, and high pressure systems rotate clockwise. So we have two counter-rotating systems right over Manhattan at that moment.
Wow.
Coincidence. And we also look at some other issues here. You look at the relative humidity. It has this linear drop from 80% down to 40%. It started working its way down the day before then. Just interesting with the events. And on the bottom chart, we have the Earth's magnetic field, recorded at 6 different stations in Alaska. And, for 4 days or so before that, it's uneventful. And then right where the North Tower gets its hole, it seems to drop, things start happening there. And it gets back to normal almost after Building 7 goes poof. Next. So we're going to look at just a blow-up of this region. Next. So as we approach, the time when WTC1 got its hole, see how the values start trending downward?
Yeah, what does that mean?
It's just what the Earth's magnetic field, it wanders around. It does different things. This is measurements from the ground. I also looked at satellite magnetometer values that really are sensitive to space weather, and that was uneventful until the 12th. So this is something different down the ground that's happening. So here it is. You see it trends down until the North Tower gets its hold, and then abruptly goes up. The South Tower gets its hold, and then it goes horizontally, kind of. And then WTC2 goes poof, and it starts going down. WTC1 goes poof, and it really goes down, like drops over the edge of a cliff. Then it's haywire all afternoon, and gets back under control just about the time Building 7 goes poof. Just coincidence.
Wow. And then it seems to go normal after Building 7. It kind of goes back to us.
There's a little bit of a magnetic resonance in there, but it's it's almost back to normal. Now the blue value
part maybe.
Well, the part between WTC1 going poof. I'm not going to use the word collapse because it didn't collapse. So poof is just a simple term for that, for the building going away. So between the blue WTC1 poof and the green WTC7 poof, all that time in there was when Building 7 was dustifying internally.
Now, at what point do we know that the cars were being toasted in this?
They were toasted sort of on the rebound of right after the dust cloud rolls out, because of that testimony from the various first responders who said the dust rose up and blocked out all the sunlight. It was totally, you couldn't see your hand in front of your face, but thank goodness those cars then lit up, because then we could see where we were. That establishes the timing. So the dust cloud rolled out, went up, blocked out the sun, and then the cars lit up. Fairly shortly afterwards. So it was just after the tower's demise when the cars lit up, not during. Not during the dust rollout, but just after. And so this dustifying all afternoon of Building 7 was going on while this magnetometer reading was kind of haywire. Maybe it's a coincidence, maybe it's not. The dark blue line, which looks more extreme compared to everything else, that measurement is the most northern, right on the edge of the water, the closest to the magnetic north pole. Maybe it's more sensitive. Next. Okay. And we're going to look at a close-up. Approaching when WTC1 got its hole. You can see the values going down and then abruptly going up. As if you interpolate right where the peak of that low point is, I like to joke and say, well, NIST gave one value of the tower's demise, of the building getting hit, and 9/11 Commission Report gave another, and the Lamont-Doherty gave yet another. But I can tell you which one's right. I joke about that. Based on the magnetometer readings, that line I drew, that lies right in the middle of those three values that were given. Very, as close a match as you can get. It's between those three values are not the same. This lies within those three values. Lies between two of them. And then you can see when it goes up, when the red line occurs, it quits going up and it goes back horizontally again.
Right.
Next. We don't know if it means anything. We're just taking in the data. Never hurts to look at all the data. So we're going to look at now at more proof of concept. Now, next. Have you seen this guy before? Next. You know who this is?
Tesla? Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting character. Next. And John Hutchison tried to reproduce the work that Nikola Tesla supposedly had done. See, I can't go back. I don't like to just take somebody's word for it, because I don't know how to go back in time. I never say never. I don't know if it's impossible, but I sure don't know how to go back in time. And Nikola Tesla was dead before I came to be. So it's just stories in a book. I want to see the real thing. I spent some growing years in Missouri, you know, the show me state.
Right.
And so, you know, I go visit John Hutchison. It turns out he can reproduce all of these same effects that we saw at the WTC. Click. Including metal luminance without heat. You know, glowing metal that's not hot is sitting on a piece of paper.
Really? He
can produce that.
Wow.
Now he just has fun. It's like turn this knob here and there. He has a very good feel for it. Like, oh, let's have fun. Let's see what happens to this little troll.
Does he keep like records of like where the dials were when certain things happen? So
nah, he just has fun.
Wow.
That's probably why he's still alive.
Yeah,
he just has a good time, and let's see if we can, you know, knock the neighbors' paintings off their wall or their glass on the kitchen counter, or set off the car alarms outside. Ooh, that's fun.
I was thinking if you did something, you know, something by accident that actually was kind of cool, it'd be kind of nice to know where the settings were. So
he can reproduce certain things, like if somebody's coming to watch levitation, it takes about 20 minutes for the warm-up, then he can produce it.
Wow.
Next. But, of course, he wasn't the first. You know, Canada declared the Hutchison effect, all these different things that occur. But George Pingott even got a patent on this, radiant electrical energy, just over 100 years ago.
Yeah, I never heard of this guy. 1903?
It's when he submitted it, and they finally granted it in 1911.
That's pretty amazing that somebody was able to do something like that when you know, electricity was not that old.
Right. Imagine what he could do with a white lab coat.
Yeah.
and a hard hat.
Right.
He's got a static field there, and he's interfering something in that static field, and he gets these metal balls to be suspended.
So this technology has been around for a long time. As far as, I mean, somebody being able to figure things out like this, that's amazing.
Right.
He was kind of ahead of his time.
Right. It's in the public domain.
Wow.
And we get somebody like John Hutchison who gets some used, you know, vacuum tube equipment and fiddles around and can reproduce it. Why can't others?
Well, this is shocking because of if he was able to do this in 1903, technology, we weren't really that advanced at that point. That's amazing to me that he was able to do this.
Well, that's that we weren't advanced at that point. We're less advanced now because people know how to color in those little dots on the multiple choice test.
Oh, yeah.
They can't really think beyond the test. This is what people used to be like, thinking beyond the test.
Right.
I think that's the difference.
Yeah, I never heard of this guy. That's interesting.
Next. Some other ones that you probably haven't heard of. Now, this fellow on the left, Thomas Townsend Brown. John Hutchison also recreated his work. He was working on charging up airplane wings to make them fly faster.
Yeah, neither one of these guys, never heard of them.
And it went underground around the early 1950s, the Project Winter Haven. You know, space travel was possible. And then, you know, think back, we had supposedly, as the storybook goes, the Apollo moon landings and so forth in the 60s, and we had the space shuttle, you know, and then boom, technology stops developing. Wow. I just find that interesting. Another thing I find interesting is, according to our history books, see, I say according to it because to me those are stories. I can't go verify it. I can't go back in history. But as far as we know, that, you know, the history that we know, static electricity was developed in the year 600 BC. And you're telling me it took another 2,400 years to discover electricity?
Well, there's obviously proof of, through hieroglyphics and different things, that obviously there was some kind of advanced technology, like the pyramids and stuff. I've always wondered, you how that kind of stuff was done.
This is the thing that scares me the most, is that there is evidence over time that we have had technological development, but what happens to it? And are we in another one of those cycles where people are getting so dumbed down that they defeat their world? And we're soon to be out working in the fields, in the next couple of generations, who don't even know how to rub two sticks together.
Well, at least in my lifetime, I mean, one thing I've noticed is when you look at least, the last 2,000 years, it's pretty amazing the technology advancement just in the last 100 years. I mean, just for like 1903, this guy already was doing this static levitation stuff. That's pretty
We had the Wright brothers.
Right, but I mean, if you think about it, just the last century, we've seen more technological advancement than we've seen in.
But look at the past 20 or 30 years.
Right. Well, it seems like
you go downhill.
Well, I don't know. I guess I don't know.
In the public domain. In the public domain.
Well, I mean, it seems like they got a new iPhone and a new computer coming out every 6 months. So that's what I'm just saying. It seems like technology is. Right. Always
it's just another, it's still though another gizmo. There's no new kind of space flight or you would think if in 1969 that the humans were were able to go land on the moon, why did they forget how to do that? Are we regressing, or what's the deal? This is just questions, no answers. They're just interesting questions to look at and also think about the ramifications of how things are developing. And you look at what this guy could do in, over 100 years ago. Why hasn't it developed further?
Right.
And so it was redeveloped by Hutchison. And the fellow on the right, Ed Leedscout, you probably haven't heard of him either. He came from about the same part of the world nearby, sort of, as Tesla. One was Serbia and one was Latvia. At about the same time. And he moved to the U.S., I think he came in through Canada. I'm not sure, but he ended up figuring out a way to excavate coral, large chunks of coral, like 15 tons each, that are just about the same size as what was used to build the Great Pyramid. And this guy is like 120 pounds. And also look at those chains behind him. Could those carry a 15-ton stone?
So what's the purpose of that? Is that just to throw you off, or what?
He's got I think a bunch of magnets on that wheel and had his own power generation.
But you're saying that. But if it's not capable of lifting one of those stones, what do you think? What was he doing with this thing?
He got something weightless somehow.
Huh. And this was in the he died in 1951. So when was he doing this?
In the early 1900s, 1940, 1930, 40, up to the time he died. He was always, working on stuff, and he only would work at night when nobody was looking. He always had a sense if somebody was looking.
So nobody witnessed how he did it. He didn't use heavy equipment or anything like that.
Oh, no.
Obviously they wouldn't even have heavy equipment at that time.
They would hear a whistling kind of sound, and trying to sneak up on him. He actually moved his whole castle that he built 10 miles down the road. And as the story goes, they brought a flatbed truck in, and he says, you leave it there, I'll have it loaded up by morning.
Do you know when hydraulics were invented? I don't know about that.
Yeah, no, but this is something else. So again, here's the story. So they bring in the flatbed truck, and in the evening, and he says, you just leave it here, I'll have it loaded by morning. And this happened a couple of times, and the driver was, whoa, wait. And so he goes out and loops around, comes back 20 minutes later, and the thing's half loaded already. There was something that this guy was doing. Now, people get skeptical when they say, oh, well, he was afraid to show it to anybody because it's all a hoax. And no, I got to realizing why he didn't show it to anybody. Imagine what this technology can do. It can destroy the planet. You don't leave a gun cabinet unlocked unless everybody in the household knows what guns can do.
Right.
And I have a feeling that he was brought up with that, that respect for it. And if somebody doesn't understand it, they shouldn't be using it. It's not to be used as a weapon.
So he didn't leave anything behind as far as how he figured this out? Or?
His Coral Castle. And let's, next slide. We'll come back to it in a minute. And here's somebody else, John Hutchison. And
pretty strong guy, huh?
Yeah. He's got this copper bar. It's about 2.5 inches in diameter. Notice it's not kinked in that bend. You couldn't even get a pipe bender and bend it like that. That's solid. It's not hollow.
What about hydraulics, like with a lot of force downward, or like a car crush machine or something?
You'd have little wrinkles. I mean, that's a whole lot of deformation.
Okay.
And that thing isn't wrinkled.
That's pretty smooth bend, actually.
And it's not kinked or buckled or anything.
Right.
And this would bend by itself. Next. On the left is Coral Castle that Ed Leedskalnin had built. Each of those stones is about 15 tons. On the right, we have John Hutchison. And he's standing in front of the Great Pyramid. Now, down below, you see a box with a person near the bottom of the pyramid.
Yes.
Click. And up above, you'll see that they're about little less than 2 stones tall, the same as Ed Leedskalnin's doorway. That's a good check to say, yeah, they're about the same size stones.
I have a question. Is there how did he cut these stones? That's because everything looks pretty straight, too. How was he able to do that?
And you need to go visit. It's down in Florida. You can go visit the place, Coral Castle. He had a clock, depending on where the moon was and so forth, that would be pretty close, that he carved into a table. A whole lot of very interesting things. He had a 9-ton gate doorway that balanced on a spindle. And something happened to it years later, and they needed to fix it. And they brought in these humongous cranes, and they still couldn't get it balanced. You just touch it, and spin. The stone just, balanced on the perfect balance point.
Wow.
Next.
No, nobody's been able to figure out how he did it.
Not that how he can do that, but how they can reproduce it somewhat. You go watch how John Hutchison levitates water. And also there's some monks someplace that can sing and levitate things. But there's a lot of stuff that we're not taught in school. That if we become aware and just observe, we'll learn a whole lot about the world around us, where this physics does exist already in nature. Anyway, in this video I'm about to show, you can see on the top where we have different frames showing this solid iron block kind of double over and fume. And afterwards, it's colder to the touch than ambient temperature.
Did you actually see this experiment when you visited?
Not this one, but other ones.
Okay.
Similar ones. So this block is like 2 inches by 2 inches by 7 inches tall.
And that's how it turned out. Wow.
Yeah, and remember, you get door handle, something happening to them, and they fume?
Yeah, I remember that. Uh-huh.
And we're also going to see that now this buckling and fuming block of iron, that was on a plywood table, the target area.
At Texas A&M, a group led by Professor John Bockrath, who is widely regarded as one of the world's greatest electrochemists, reported an isotope tritium, a key signature that some unusual nuclear reaction was going on.
The first thing was this thing called tritium, which was a sub-form of hydrogen which should not exist except in extremely tiny quantities. We found that by working these cells of Fleischmann and Pons containing lithium hydroxide and deuterium oxide, that we could produce this tritium in great abundance, let's say at 10,000 times more than it ought to be there, as it were. And let me stress that we couldn't do it every time, but about one result in 5 or one result in 4, and eventually we worked up to 2 results out of 3, we could produce tritium. That was the first thing, and in a way it was the first clear proof of the phenomenon.
And but the most important and unbelievable phenomenon at that time was the observation of tritium.
Back at Texas A&M, Bockris's group found themselves under attack. Science magazine writer Gary Tobbs wrote a stinging article that insinuated that someone in the group had spiked the samples with tritium. Although unfounded and eventually proved untrue, the allegation effectively dampened Bockris's remarkable claims.
But I think the main part was that I had done work which was against the paradigm, and that was what they were really upset about. People had laughed at it and said, "What the heck are you doing, trying to disprove the laws of nuclear physics?" And of course, that's exactly what we were doing, and succeeding, you see.
The tritium work was the first indication to me that there was a reality, and then Claytor at Los Alamos also got positive results, and so did Howard Menlove. And they're people that I respect and could talk to personally. It became fairly clear that there was a very strange phenomena occurring here.
There are also, in similar experiments sometimes, and rather dissimilar experiments sometimes, evidence of an anomalous nuclear process.
However, it is conceivable that there may be a process even more powerful than nuclear reaction that physics does not yet understand. That is the mystery of cold fusion. Yet as early as 1992, cold fusion experimenters began reporting unusual appearances of trace amounts of different metals such as copper, silver, chromium, and zinc when examining their spent cells. Rechecking for possible contamination, scientists like Bockris and Miley confirmed that indeed new metals and isotopes were being formed, transmuted, during the process which produces excess heat.
Kevin Wolf made many measurements of tritium. Then he got some even more astonishing results as early as '92, which were these transmutational results, the metal forming another metal inside the electrode, you see, which was super anti-paradigm. You know, there's that dreadful word alchemy, which we mustn't use, but it was a form of that in a way, that it was creating new metals, you see.
We see transmutation phenomena. We see helium-4 production. We see a range of methods of getting the excess heat. The writing is on the wall. The fossil fuel age is about to end.
The sword of this panel's condemnation struck with speed and brutality, ignoring the facts in a blind rush to judgment.
Hot fusion physics people have been very vigorous in their denunciation of this being called fusion.
Right away, reports came in of excess heat, much too large to be from any chemical reaction. Laboratories from Texas to India confirmed the presence of tritium, a vital determining feature of a nuclear reaction.
Within 2 or 3 weeks, we got the first results, and several groups started saying, yes, we are seeing excess heat, and but the most important and unbelievable phenomenon at that time was the observation of tritium.
This was a discovery perhaps as significant as the Wright brothers' first flight at Kitty Hawk.
There are also, in similar experiments, evidence of an anomalous nuclear process.
In the free-for-all that followed the cold fusion announcement, hot fusion proponents drew the specious conclusion that cold fusion must work like hot fusion. If Pons and Fleischmann are alive, they contended, then their results must be faulty, since the neutron radiation from the fusion reaction would surely have killed them. They refused to consider that another form of the same process might be at work. In the years that have followed, the cold fusion process has repeatedly produced not only heat energy, but also nuclear byproducts such as tritium and the ash from a nuclear reaction, that all-important indicator of nuclear fusion, helium.
It's clearly not possible to produce helium from a chemical process. The only possibility that remains is that the helium is produced by a nuclear process. If the helium is produced by a nuclear process, then necessarily there will be an associated release of heat. Having seen the effect with my own eyes, the claims from a few that this is impossible inconsistent with all known laws of nuclear physics. These suggestions are in fact irrelevant.
all the data says that some form of directed electromagnetic energy was used to basically break down the materials of the World Trade Center. And the connections that Jones has between the cold fusion experience that everybody can read about in Dr. Malaw's book and with what's going on right now with the 9/11 situation, it's just a mirror image of him muddling up and then, trying to get public opinion against, whoever his target is. In this case, it's Dr. Judy Wood. In the previous case, it was Pons and Fleischmann.